You're listening to Australia's national youth radio station, Triple J. For more info, go to triplej.net.au.
Sunday Night Safran. Religion, politics, culture, and lisping.
Shalom, Father Bob, or in your language, Pax.
Pax.
Pax, which is Latin for peace.
Pax, salam, Pax.
What's on the show tonight?
You've got lots of lovely things. How do you make a TV pilot anyway?
With
Todd Cohen.
Todd Cohen.
Friend of yours.
He's the vice president of the production company that did my pilot in America. Because everyone's asking me what's happening with the pilot. So I just thought I'd get him on the phone and ask him what's happening. He won't tell us
either, obviously. Will he?
I don't know. I really don't know. I haven't talked to him for a couple of weeks.
So this will be a scoop.
This could be like him, letting me down and just going,
I'm
the
sorry.
focus group testing. I could be humiliated on radio.
On radio. And then you've got the Corns from Cornland.
That's because...
Who's Cornish around here?
I don't know who's Cornish around here. But
Corny, but not Cornish.
You heard that... Well, you probably didn't. It was a very small story, but Jamie Oliver's restaurant in Cornwall...
I saw that. Was firebombed.
Well, I think... Was it
robbed?
I think there was a death, a kind of a terrorist threat.
Yeah.
And it was from some Cornish separatist group.
Yes.
So I wanted to find out all the Cornish.
That's very exciting. So we've got the secretary on, Mr. Dunkerley.
He's not a terrorist.
No.
He's not from a terrorist Cornish. He's just one of those delightful little Cornish groups where they dress up in the clogs and wear the native dress and cook Cornish pies and that kind of thing.
Exactly. And then you've got the famous Julian Burnside, QC, the president of Liberty Victoria, talking about freedom of speech. And then finally and ultimately, you've got this very exciting Christopher Hitchens.
You are.
Author of God is Not Great.
He is probably equal first in the new atheist movement, waiting to kick down people like you. He's equal first with Dickie Dawkins.
Oh, certainly. What about Sam?
Sam Harris. We've talked to him already.
See what I mean? But I mean, this, I've got nothing to say. So you'll have to do this all on your own because I read the book.
Yes.
And
God is Not Great by Christopher
agree
Hitchens.
With everything in the book. So that's the end of that.
He's arguing the case for atheism and you're a Catholic priest.
No, didn't you know that? The Christians are the original atheists.
Bob.
Now, what about... That's it.
We'll talk more after this.
Flood
Can you do
Sydney.
obituaries on the run?
Like who's dead?
Like, just say you got the call and it's like, Sappho.
Yeah. Was mangled by a rubbish disposal unit?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you just come over?
Immediately.
Yes. Would you be able to just bang, bang, bang kind of...
We gathered here tonight in the sight of Yahweh and all the other gourds allowed by Mr. Hitchens to farewell our friend, John Safran, who has made so many changes in Australian life and especially infotainment and satire that nobody immediately springs to mind who would fill his boots.
Do you reckon infotainment, that would make it to my tombstone? Get chiselled in there? King of infotainment.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, what more do you want me to say?
What about, do you ever get calls for people to do funerals and you didn't know the person at all and they're saying, can you just sort of...
Well, they always make links.
Knock something together.
Well, they always make links like you married us 30 years ago or this child was baptised in your church 130 years ago.
You know,
you've got to make links.
My dad's so old that he turns up to a lot of funerals because it's like he's knowing a lot of people and people's parents who died. Yeah. And he started to kind of get really snarky. He's like David and Margaret on the movie show, but about the funeral service. And he comes back and he makes all these snide comments like, they went on a bit about her, service to the community. Give me a break.
Yeah, see, well, the evil that you do lives after you, the good is often interred with your bones. Who said that? Brutus. Did he? About Caesar. But I've got a funeral on Monday, 25 years of age he was, you see, and we sat down today around the table and designed the service.
Anything interesting because he's a youngster?
Interesting insofar as because his daddy stuck with him through the ordeal of chemical dependency for years, both father and son.
Oh, really?
I
thought drugs were really cool and made you really creative, but are you saying there's some downside to them?
There is a downside, in fact. If you get off them for a period of time and you come back or somebody seduces you back to them, well, then you may find that you've been far away from them long enough that the next dose is fatal.
Do you remember, might have been just last week, I was talking about how if you go down Carlisle Street, East St Kilda, you can see that the ugliest Israeli is better looking than, the best looking Roman Catholic.
Of course, no question.
And you agreed, and we had a few people on the guest book who were, in fact, one guy from Ireland who just said, no, I concur.
Yes.
Now, you think I'm making this up, but have a look at this. This just came out this week, so I've got to give you a photocopy of it. I didn't get the actual invite. Look at that there.
What, ugly Catholics?
No, have a look at the photo on the top of there, of that.
Oh, yes, and who's that? A Jewish person or a Roman Catholic person?
It's an invite.
Women of the Israeli Defence Forces.
It's an invitation to the Maxim, which is a...
nightclub?
No, it's like a magazine. It's a bit like FHM.
Sorry. Yep.
And they're having their special Women of the Israeli Defence Force special.
But that girl's lying flat on her back and she's got nothing on.
Yeah, she's wearing a khaki bikini.
Well, she's obviously not a suicide bomber.
It looks like she's on the top of the Wailing Wall.
There's something wrong with that
like
girl.
That. Anyway, the reason this was like a PR thing. This wasn't like Maxim didn't come up with this themselves. Let me read out this press release. Can you just cover me for a second?
Yes, I would like to cover you.
This was a public relations offensive, the brainchild of David Saranga, the consul for the media and public affairs at the Israeli consulate in New York. So it's official. It's like Israeli government sanctioned. He came up with the idea while carrying up poll numbers that showed his country was not particularly well regarded in the US, especially amongst those aged 18 to 35. But there was a silver lining hidden in the survey data. When asked how they perceived Israelis as people, one of the popular adjectives was good-looking.
So you've got proof for your theory.
Yeah. Looking forward to this. Women of the IDF.
Maybe Israeli women are good-looking.
And not the men. Oh, the guys are pretty hot too.
Oh.
I mean...
You said something last week I couldn't understand about Euro-Asians. Eurasians?
Yes.
Being good-looking.
Well, it's the same thing. The worst-looking Eurasian is better-looking than the best-looking Roman Catholic Irish.
Oh, I see.
And I know there's kind of crossovers, and you have Roman Catholic Eurasians, right? So I know that. I understand.
You know we're global. Even cosmic.
Now, coming up next, we're going to be talking to Todd Cohen
from
Los Angeles.
You're nervous about this, aren't you? This is a big
Vice
moment
President of Reveille.
Yeah, and he's got
the production company.
Destiny in his hands.
Yep. Who did my pilot?
I don't.
But this is Triple J. I'm John Safran. That's Father Bob. I see Father Bob when you know that there's an important gatekeeping US television executive at the other end of the line. Suddenly your back announcements are a lot tighter.
Well, I thought,
as if you're auditioning, as if, he's going to be listening in and saying, who's that?
He might say that
talented young man.
And I'll get a phone call after the show making me an offer that I can't refuse.
Todd Cohen, are you there?
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Going very well. John Safran.
Vice President of Creative Affairs at Reveille. I didn't realise you had such a high title. When I was over there,
around when we interact with you.
Oh, really? What were you when you were when you were doing my show? So, are you above doing my show now? Were you, or what?
Your show's beneath me. Yes.
Yes. No. What was your position when I was over there?
That was my position when you were over there.
Oh, really? I would have treated you with more reverence. You were just the guy from Reveille for me. I didn't realise.
I wasn't that last summer when we first sold the show. But.
Oh, no, now I understand. Now we're getting very finicky and uninterested. Now, can I ask you, before I left to come back to Australia, you said this to me. You said, John, I don't even want to put you on the plane because I know in like 4 days' time I'm going to have to buy another plane ticket to bring you back to America to start filming this show. It's been about 3 weeks. What's happening?
We are waiting to hear how a focus group of American teenagers respond to John Safran.
That can't be good news. It can't be
Vegas.
A focus group in Las Vegas, really?
Las Vegas is basically the new middle of America.
Oh no! And how many of these pilots are being shown at these focus groups?
I don't know the total, actually.
Because these, of course, because Reveille did some of the pilots, but other production companies would have done others of the pilots, so you don't know all of these.
Yeah, their total screening would have been somewhere between 15 and 20 pilots, and maybe their focus group being half of that.
And what do you reckon? What do you reckon it's looking like? Is it?
Don't tell him. Professionalism has been
misinformation, Father Bob.
Exactly, I think it is. I think he's pushing his. You know what I mean? Asking too much.
You can be honest. You can be honest. I've got a very thick skin, Todd. You can just tell me the truth here. What's it looking like?
I think, as we've always suspected, everyone really likes you, and there's a concern over whether or not you are right for the MTV audience in the U.S.
For the MTV, yeah, that's the thing we left out. It is
your
for
sensibility is appropriate.
It is a pilot for MTV.
Mark Philippoussis is gone, apparently.
Yeah, he's another Australian, Mark Philippoussis, a personality here, a tennis player, and he's got some show in America that hasn't gone that well, apparently, ratings-wise, the first one.
Yeah, but he still gets to be in a house full of 30 women all vying to get to bed with him.
That's not a Reveille production, is it? Is that one a Reveille production? No. Now, Reveille, you do, probably the most famous one you do, Ugly Betty.
Yep.
Terrific Ugly Betty.
You do...
I love Ugly Betty.
You do The Office, the US version of The Office, and Morgan Spurlock's 30 Days.
Yep.
There you go. So I don't know...
You guys have the Biggest Loser down there.
Yes, we've got that's Reveille production too?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do when the results come back from MTV saying we focus group the pilot and everyone thinks he's a lisping, unfunny idiot?
Idiot?
Idiot. What's our plan B, Todd Cohen?
Well, thankfully we have about 500 channels here, cable channels here in the U.S., and so I'll just go to the one that plays to that niche. And
what is that niche? What station do you reckon that is?
Well, for the lisping, wow, I could really get into trouble there.
The audibly impaired.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to complain about you being too dumbed down at MTV.
I understand.
If anything, the problem will be you being too smart for the room.
I love that. That's the room.
I like that.
You like it too smart for the room?
Yes, yeah. Too smart for the bloody studio.
So give us a date. Surely
you'll talk yourself out of this in a minute, John.
Hip-hop.
You what? Sorry, what?
No.
You what? What?
I didn't realize you played... I liked the music you were playing before I came on. I didn't realize that was the kind of music you played on your show.
What did you think it was, like Bach or something like that, or sophisticated?
It was more, John Denver.
Can I get some sort of date out of you for like a yes and a no? What's MTV telling you about when they're going to get back to you?
Actually, you're right near it. The focus group is tomorrow.
Oh, God.
We better start lighting candles, mate.
But then after the focus group, do they feed it into a machine and then, start putting out pie graphs? Do they have to analyse it, or is it really simple? Is it just like focus group says yes and no and then the next day?
That I couldn't tell you. I guess if it's overwhelmingly universally loved, it's a pretty easy decision, and if it's universally reviled, it's a pretty easy decision. If you fall in the middle, it probably becomes more complex. But for some reason, if I had to guess, I feel you're going to fall somewhere in the middle. I think some people are going to love you, and some people aren't going to get you. They're not going to understand it.
You see, look how he phrases it. Not like people will hate me, but like that they won't understand me.
Who could hate you?
Impossible. Like Mr. Borat, who could possibly hate him?
Yeah, I know.
See what I mean?
Now, did
you have that cute lisp?
Now, how do you think the 2 months went, like, as a production? You've worked on a lot of productions. How would you compare it, the John Safran pilot with other things you've worked on? Did it go smoothly? Many hiccups?
I don't think there's ever a pilot that goes smoothly. But every pilot is basically a startup company, and everyone is working together for the first time and trying to figure out how to make this thing go, how to produce the best product. And I don't think that's ever a smooth process. If it goes too easily, I think it's probably a bad sign.
What do you reckon about the fight ratio in making the pilot? Was that about average for a pilot, or was it a bit high or a bit low?
You rolled over really easily most of the time, so it was cool.
There were a few. I wish we were filming the fights. I don't think people will appreciate the kind of the fun. In fact, that would make a good Reveille show, wouldn't it? The fights behind the scene. The
passion that goes into making the John Safran Saves America pilot.
Yes.
Somehow I think that'll remain on the cutting room floor. But no, I think you have that on any show. There's always going to be a handful of people get really passionate about what they're doing, and when you're doing a creative endeavor, people feel really strongly about their point of view. And for someone like yourself, where you're the guy on camera, on the screen, who's got to stand behind whatever's being shown, it's a tough road to follow when it's not completely in your hands.
Now, it's already been screened for the MTV executives, hasn't it? How many people were in that meeting?
75.
Wow. Why are there so many executives? What possibly could they all be doing?
MTV's owned by a huge conglomerate. So there are people
Viacom.
But it's owned by Viacom. So there are people watching it from multiple levels of the company, and from multiple divisions. There's ad sales people watching, questioning whether or not they could sell it to an advertiser. There's online people watching, wondering if it plays well online and how the show could be, promoted virally. There are other creative people working on it who didn't work on the show, who are removed from it and can perhaps judge it more fairly. It's a varied group.
And what about the competition? Did you hear about any of the other pilots?
I didn't hear about any of the other pilots by name. I do know that, I was told that our pilot, they do them in sessions, and our screening, we were in the morning screening. And so they go on a retreat to screen all these pilots because it's, several hours worth of viewing. And they watched our pilot in the morning, and we were apparently, for better or worse, the talk of lunch. Everyone at lunch was discussing our show, and some people got it, some people didn't. For in the show, for obviously no one has seen it yet outside of MTV, but in the show, John skewers Super Sweet 16, which is an incredibly successful program for MTV. And John pokes fun at what it represents here in America. And I think it went over, for a lot of people, it went over very poorly at MTV because a lot of people have made a lot of money from that show who were in that room watching that pilot.
But sure, that was just a small little bit, wasn't it? Surely they could look over that.
Shockingly, for something that was on screen for probably about a minute and a half in a 21-minute show, that was the item that was most talked about to me from various people who saw the pilot.
No, and when do we get to the bitchy stage where we all start where it doesn't work, and then we all start blaming each other for what went in and what was left out?
Oh, we already started that. You've just been out of the country.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Charlie, your co-producer, and I, we've been blaming you the whole time.
Excellent. Well, I hope to.
We're not on camera.
Pardon? Yeah, I know. Well, I hope to get the phone call one way or the other. Pretty soon. But if not, what am I going to do?
I think we'll have a good sense. This may be your last weekend of pining by the phone.
Thank you very much, Todd
and the
Cohen.
Last weekend on Triple J.
The Vice President of Creative Affairs at Reveille. Any other shows you want to pitch before... Bob, do you want to pitch a show to Todd?
They may well need a kind of the Earth is Flat clergyman, somebody who hasn't got any issues with anything.
Sure, isn't there like a huge like Christian demographic there? Does Reveille have a branch trying to appeal to that demographic? Maybe Bob could oversee that.
At 73 years of age.
We don't have any of them specifically, but yeah, it would be a very good market to tap into here. There are whole
the unreconstructed Christians of the US of A.
Well, me and Bob will chuck together a document, pitching the Father Bob show, and we'll talk to you about that very soon.
Fantastic! Finally, piece of talent.
You can't wait. You can't wait.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Todd.
Do you know something interesting about Spider-Man that I didn't know? Michael Chabon,
our friend,
author of
the Yiddish Policemen's Union,
and
The Final Solution,
and
The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay,
wrote or co-wrote Spider-Man 2.
Get away.
Seriously. Which kind of makes sense. If you've read The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, that's all
which
about...
I haven't done.
That's all about the comic book world.
Oh, it is.
So it doesn't seem like a huge... And he creates a whole comic book character called the Escapist in it.
I see.
But that's an interesting fact.
So Spider-Man movies are not just your potboilers, but they're literary gems.
I don't know. I did not see Spider-Man 2. I'm very disappointed to see behind my back...
What?
You tried to get ahead of me by buying another Michael Chabon book so you could read it.
Look, you made me read the bloody Yiddish Policemen's Union,
yes,
which I slogged through, and I got to the end. I read the last chapter when I went home last week. A little bit unsatisfactory.
And you thought...
I then went to the bookshop.
Because you knew that I was going to be able to sound more informed when we finally have our little book club discussion about it, because I'd read Cavalier and Clay.
Yeah.
So you went off this week.
And bought The Final Solution.
And you're ahead of me on that, because I also am reading that at the moment.
Exactly.
I'm only up to page 15.
Well, I'm up to page 27.
Well, that's annoying.
You see? And I'm fascinated with the parrot.
Don't give away any more.
The parrot is the key player. That's all I'm saying. Now, listen, if you keep stuffing these bloody books down my throat, I'd say I'm going to have a stroke. I've got to read all these books in 24 hours. But tonight, of course, we've got that beautiful writer, Mr. Christopher Hitchens.
Who you agree with every single word.
Everything he says.
Did you read this in Bulletin magazine this week about how two gay refugees from Bangladesh were celebrating a victory in late 2003 because they'd been granted asylum.
In this country, Australia, yes.
Because of extreme homophobia where they were.
Thank you.
But then there was a subsequent investigation where they poked around to see whether they were actually gay or whether they were faking it for the sake of asylum. I didn't know there was the gay asylum-seeking thing in Australia. I knew it was there in England, in the UK, because people have come from Jamaica and claimed, in the way that, I don't know, a Kurd might come from Iran and say, listen, I can't go back, I'm going to get tortured.
Yeah.
People have come from Jamaica and illegally and said, listen, let me into the UK because if I go back to Jamaica, I'll get beaten up because I'm gay. And they get granted asylum.
Yes.
I had no idea that was going on in Australia.
But Australia it is. And the men are faking sometimes.
I wonder how you...
Same-gender relationships so they can avoid being sent back. I don't know, but then we've got a whole thing on that, haven't we, coming up? There's a man coming to talk to us about all that.
Maybe in a couple of weeks.
I think a couple of weeks. But that is fascinating, plus the analysis of the refugee committee. Very arbitrary, it says, very arbitrary, how those people on that tribunal make their decisions about who goes and who stays. I've had a couple of experiences with that.
Have you hidden anyone?
What?
Have you ever hidden anyone?
No, I've never hidden anybody.
Like an illegal?
No, but I've known where a person... I know. Well, see, this is the problem. Hidden means that you've actually involved in the hiding process, whereas somebody just disappears. You see? Now, if you know where they are, Are you actually implicated in the frustration of the law? Seeing it's Commonwealth law, Commonwealth police persons looking for people.
So you've known people who the police are
disappeared.
After. And you've
I never
known
knew
where
they were. You see, just because you get a phone call or somebody says, by the way...
So you're saying the police have rung you to ask where someone is?
I'm saying that the person himself might ring you from a place unknown, and you find out later that, in fact, this person is de facto on the run. You see? Now, what are you going to do? What in the name? What are you supposed to alert the federal police? They know already. They know, all these people who came here and got protection visas, temporary protection visas, which meant they were here but they were not here kind of thing, and they could go at any minute. It's hard to know how to deal with those people because, the Aussie sense...
How?
What, the Aussies of scepticism that most of these people who come here, they're only coming here to rip us off and all that, whereas they come from places like Kosovo, let alone Africa. I mean, I'm not going to argue with anybody from Africa, and yet the tribunal oftentimes argues with them and says you're in no danger whatsoever if we send you back.
My boss at SBS, Debbie Lee, was telling me that she was in a taxi recently with a Somalian. Mm. And she was trying to be really, empathetic, going, must be bad being here in Australia with all the race, because she's, from SBS, and he was a man from Somalia. And he said, I laugh at your racism. He said, no, in Somalia, that's where
That's real racism.
Yeah, if you walk down the street there, you have to worry about getting a machete in your head. Mm. He sniggered at our pathetic, inferior racism in Australia.
Our black armband.
How come you never told me
what
about the vessel that holds the host?
Yeah.
What's that called?
Ciborium.
Also?
Monstrance.
Also?
Ostentarium.
Also?
Pix.
Yes. Spelled how?
Pyx.
Do you know how handy the small words with either an X or a J or a Q or a Z are in Scrabble?
No.
I can't tell you how many times over the last 10 years Pix would have got me out of a bind, but you decided to hold that to your chest.
Well, I knew. I said, look, if he had this word, he'd become the rule of the universe of Scrabble. Mm. What other words with three letters that end in X?
Well, you can do PIX also. Anyway, I don't want to go through that. I think it's very boring.
Can you do PIX?
They say it's an alternative spelling of PYX.
But not PIX for pictures?
No.
Pix.
Maybe that's how the proddies are. And stop talking about it.
Well,
it's
you
boring.
Started it.
I know, but I've got this rule. I'm only going to talk about Scrabble if there's some other layer to it.
Yes. Well, there could be another layer of deep and meaningful religion or something.
Do you know... Did I ever tell you about the time Jeremy Weinstein, who I play Scrabble with, there's another layer to this, played with a crazy woman who'd rung him up in the phone book, found out his number, she'd heard me on another radio station talking about playing Scrabble with Jeremy Weinstein. So she looked him up in the telephone book, rang him and said, hey, Jeremy. And he's like, yes. And he goes, do you want to play Scrabble? And then he's like, who is this? Do you know John? And then sort of implied that... And anyway, next thing you know, he's off playing Scrabble with this...
Mad woman.
Mad woman. And she really was
She won.
This was the same mad woman. I once walked into a bookshop in Brunswick Street and the guy behind the counter said, man, your friend's a bit strange. I'm going, my friend, who's that? And then I go, that's not my friend. And
No.
it was the same as the Weinstein woman. And he goes, yeah, she came in here and said she was your friend.
Stalking.
And then because I knew this guy, and he goes, and I had these tickets always, so we went to a play together and stuff.
Truly, is that what people do? I would have thought that was. I thought we were all suspicious of everybody. So. I go home and ask the secretary in the office who she is, just in case.
And what days do you have on that other woman?
What other woman?
Your assistant.
Oh, yes.
That
Number
one.
two,
Number
Thursday
two.
and Friday.
Okay, I might. What's her situation?
What do you mean? She's a married woman with 4 children, for God's sake.
Oh, okay.
Heaven's sake, John! I mean, what is you go around my house taking bits of paper out of my rubbish tins, and now you're actually stalking my staff.
Coming up next,
Nobody warned me about this hazard.
we have a Cornish person. Thank you, Father Bob. This is John Safran. This is Triple J. Joining us is Chris Dunkley, the Secretary of the Cornish Association of New South Wales. Hello.
Gathoa Joe and her Robert.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. I
What
was
a beautiful-
hoping you'd do that. Now,
That's Breton.
and can I mirror that phrase back to you?
It's very bad Cornish, actually.
Now, I was stunned with the news last week that the little-known Cornwall National Liberation Army had resurfaced for the first time in 20 years to make murderous threats against Jamie Oliver, who's set up a restaurant in Cornwall. Now, first of all, let's put it on the map for us. Where are we looking at?
Southwest.
Southwest, that's right. Southwest, depending on where you are. Of course, from Australia, it's up in Europe, in the British Isles, and we say it's to the west of England, fronting the Celtic Sea, and we've got Ireland across the channel from there, and also Brittany.
Of course, other people think it's just part of Britain, don't they?
Well, it is part of Britain, but some people say it's just a little bit of England, and we say, of course it isn't.
Now, what's so unique about Cornwall that it should be distinct from the rest of the UK?
Well, Cornwall has a long history, and people living there for probably 10,000 years, and the people who live there who are native Cornish are probably descended from those people. So there's a long history in the place, and certainly for some thousands of years up to historical times they spoke a Celtic language. So they were both a long time in that place, and they spoke a distinctively Celtic language, one that's been called Cornish.
And what do Cornish people want? The ones who don't want to just remain constant as it is. What actually they want? They want to secede from the UK or what?
Well, the Cornish are fairly conservative people, and that's why they've actually survived for so long. They don't necessarily want a lot of change. In fact, they want things not to change to some degree. That is, they want to be able to live their lives within their own culture and their own communities, free from the sort of too much dominance by the majority culture, which where Cornwall sits is basically English culture.
And so, do people in Cornwall do they speak Cornish still, or has it just been totally has regular English just taken over?
No, a bit like the Isle of Man, where Manx died out in the 1960s, Cornish died out in the late 1800s, and for a long time people have spoken mainly English in most of Cornwall. There are hundreds of people who are fairly fluent speakers, and some who, like me, have learnt some Cornish but can't really converse actively in it.
And can you become Cornish? If you move there, how many generations do you have to be there before the Cornish...
It's a very interesting question, actually, because one of my trips to Wales, for example, I came across a whole lot of kids speaking Welsh, and I said, oh, these from Cornish, the Welsh-speaking part of Wales. And I said, no, these are incomers who are actively learning Welsh and becoming part of the Welsh community. And I think what difficult with Cornwall is, of course, because only about half the population are native Cornish and don't actively all the time speaking Cornish, it's harder for people coming in to become part of that culture. So the dominant culture always tends to come to the surface, I suppose. But there are people who have moved to Cornwall during their lives and all grew up with an English family in Cornwall and consider themselves Cornish, and Cornish people consider themselves Cornish because it's a matter of identity. It's a bit like, who do you consider you are? What things do you hold close to you that identify you as Cornish, and for other people to be able to identify you as Cornish.
Now, were you aware that there was a segment of the population that was so passionate that they do things such as issue death threats?
Well, the Cornish National Liberation Army, it's a bit Monty Pythonish, isn't it, really?
Yes.
You wonder whether it's going to be the Liberation Army of Cornwall next, but I mean, there's a quote from an English policeman who says, there's probably only a couple of blokes, well, I didn't say blokes, but fellows coming out of their parlours every now and again to daub a few slogans around. That's probably what it is. But underneath that, of course, there are bubbling resentments, of Cornish native people, Cornish-born people, and people who relate to Cornwall. Britain, of course, in the EU is one of the more prosperous parts of the EU. Yet Cornwall, the native Cornish, their socio-economic situation is closer to Albania than it is to Devon across the border.
Now, are young Cornish people, are they getting this streak of nationalism, or is it something just the older people are into?
I think it's something every generation discovers, and certainly the post-war generation and the baby boomers were both very active. But if you go on the chat rooms, the YouTube type equivalents, conversations and so on, you see now young people who are quite passionate about Cornwall.
Mining, Chris, mining it was the staple industry, wasn't it, in Cornwall?
Mining's been a big part of the economy.
Coal mining.
Phoenician times, no. Copper, tin, particularly.
Oh.
Tin back to Phoenician times, copper from about the 1700s, 1600s.
Now, where are you from, Bob? Where's your family from?
Scotland, the brave.
But which part?
I'm just a lowland, what do you call it?
No, don't just say that.
No, Glaswegian.
So what do you empathise with the Cornish cause?
I tried to find... Well, of course, with the Cornish cause, because all of the... You don't want independence or anything, though, do you?
I'm sure there are people who do, but it's a bit unrealistic. The population's less than 500,000.
You're already a county.
We're not going to do a Luxembourg.
No,
but certainly
you're already a county.
Yeah, but that's becoming less and less.
Is it?
As well, the UK is going through a change in its administration where quongos tend to be being set up. People are losing their representation and being managed by government authorities run from Whitehall.
Now, I read some of you guys wanted devolution, if I'm pronouncing. And what does that exactly mean?
Devolution's a term used in the UK and in Europe to basically say, well, a bit like Scotland got its own parliament, Wales got its own parliament. So to put the representation back closer to the people.
Now, is there any aspect of be careful what you wish for because it might come true? Do the people of Cornwall just benefit so much from being part of Europe and from the UK that, maybe it's not a good idea to want to split?
Well, we certainly benefit being part of the EU, a bit like Ireland benefits from being part of the EU. But there have been studies done, and fairly authoritative studies done, to say that by Cornwall having more scope of its own identity and its own future and making decisions for itself, it actually generate more income than comes into Cornwall from the central government.
And why did the language just get snuffed out like that? Like, why didn't it continue? It
retreated to the west as the influence of English increased and the way land ownership increased, and of course, particularly the Civil War, English Civil War. We had priests in the Catholic Church at that stage, before the Reformation, who were Cornish-speaking. A lot of them were lost over time in plagues, replaced by English-speaking priests. A lot of fought on the wrong side, were involved, and the landowners involved on the wrong side in the English Civil War. Side of the Royalists lost their lands if they didn't lose their heads. So the gentry, I suppose, were lost. And then gradually, the community lost.
And is there any religious dimension to all this? What are the Cornish?
Cornish, well, mostly atheist from my viewpoint. Being there, it was the centre of one of John Wesley's, Reformation strongholds. But today, they really need another Reformation, or not a Reformation, but a restoration of faith. But there are people also.
Christopher Hitchens might be helpful to you.
People are looking back to the Celtic Church. Prior to Augustine.
Early.
Early Celtic Church. Yeah.
No connections with France?
With Brittany.
Yeah.
The Bretons are our brothers and sisters I'm part Breton as well as being Cornish, because there were so much commerce and trade across the Channel, and the family connections right across. And the Bretons, of course, have got their own same problem as us with the French, but there are more of them who speak their own language.
Are you going to move back to Cornwall? Are you going to remain a diaspora?
You can hear I'm born here.
Yes.
I'd love to move to Cornwall. I don't think I can afford to fight the land and prices. I think you'd need to be able to sell something in Rose Bay or Toorak to be able to buy a decent place in Cornwall these days, and that's one of the problems.
Thank you very much.
Millions of pounds.
Thank you very much, Chris
Dunkley, Secretary, Cornish
filling in our
Association,
brains with this information.
And Cornish Bard, which we didn't get onto.
Well, maybe another week.
Okay.
Sunday Night Safran on Triple J.
Sunday Night Safran. That's John Safran, and I'm Bob Maguire.
Now, as you know, each week we like to look at a different paper from around Australia.
Yes, thank God. The variety is stunning. So tonight,
this week,
the Cornish News.
This week I thought I'd go for the Australian Jewish News. Now, listen, my local representative, Labor MP Michael Danby, this is page 2, under Schmooze. Jewish Labor MP Michael Danby made headlines this week after he was ejected from Question Time in federal parliament for sucking on what the Age described as a lozenge, but what the Australian referred to as a lolly. Speaker David Hawker was outraged when he thought that Danby was finishing off lunch and asked him to do it outside. But an injured Danby was simply warding off a cough, and he indignantly waved his lollies or lozenges at Hawker as he made his exit. Danby was contacted by the Australian Jewish News, and he wanted to emphasise that his cough candy lollies were kosher and bought from Kraus Foods Kosher Deli in Melbourne's Ripponlea neighbourhood.
It's too much. Now, see, I shouldn't laugh at that, because that's a matter of religion, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing funny in that story at all.
Nothing at all.
Kraus Foods, you wouldn't know about that. You have to be pretty hardcore to know, because that's like this place where there's not even like a shop front. You have to know.
Oh, there's no. Is it open to the public?
Oh yeah, it's open to the public, but it's like it's such a specific market. It's ultra kosher.
Ah.
So anyone who knows, and that it's not really for anyone else. I've been there, and the good thing about it is a wide variety of multicultural dishes that you can get there. You can get like ingredients so you can make kosher Chinese food and stuff. Like, what do they think, those wonton kind of...
Woks?
No, like the thing so you can make those little yum...
No, I don't know Chinese. I don't know Chinese, except noodles. That's all. Beware of the salt. But what's the difference? You're going to say this is boring. The difference between kosher and ultra-kosher? No, righto. Fair enough. It's boring.
No, I don't... There's like kosher, and then there's kosher, and then there's kosher, like that. Righto. For example, the ultra-Orthodox, they like even like milk and stuff. Like I was once at, this is true, at a yeshiva college school camp, and they'd forgotten the whole, because they were all kind of too busy in their heads thinking about Talmud and Gemara and Tanya, right? And they'd forgotten to get like milk. And then it was like, oh, what's the big deal? You can just like go down to the local store and get kind of milk. But because it was like so kosher, they had to buy a cow.
Truly?
Absolutely, promise you.
That's not true. You're making it up.
You can ring...
What, but we're going to get real milk out of a cow.
Yeah, but
the same as you would out of a packet.
Yeah, but there's that whole thing about the vats and whether the vats...
Oh,
whether
I see. So this is straight from the cow to the drinker. I understand.
It's like a supervision thing. So at some dairies, there would be a rabbi that would go there every 2 months to check that the vats weren't used to cook a pig.
I understand. Yeah, it's the same with
not ridiculous
your
at all.
friend Mr. Hitchens, who's not listening, please God, to this already. But while I was reading his book, he came up with the statement that, like Roman Catholics, have to eat fish on Friday. Now, that was the case. We had to eat fish on Friday. The thing was that we were not supposed to eat meat on Friday.
Are you going to have a go at him for that?
No, God no, because he cut me down to
he's not even worth having a fight with. He can be totally wrong and you right, and he'll still beat you in an argument.
I know. I'm not going to get into any of that.
And he might even punch you.
Yeah, through the microphone. Humble as a doormat. John,
now,
you going to go or am I going to go?
No, you go.
Why do you have to keep bringing on more and more militant atheists each week? They don't speak for the atheist population in Australia, says JB.
I don't know, just because
I enjoy watching...
Yeah,
you do,
I like watching you squirm. That's why.
Exactly.
Is that complicated?
Exactly. And then Wikipedia surgery you mentioned in great detail.
Yes.
Always interesting to listen to us, she says. Only a matter of time, liberalism is to blame. I don't understand that, but I'm old.
Look at this. Did you see that?
I didn't see that. What is that, you? Giz, look. We are handing across, for the purposes of this recording, a newspaper known as the Australian Jewish News on page 7 to Rabbi Glick with love. Dear Rabbi Glick, in my this is you.
They've really screwed. There was a supplement this week in the Jewish News about 50 years of Yeshiva College, right?
Yeah.
And what they did, they obviously, because they told me this on the phone, they said, we're asking everyone, like, old people who've been to write a little thing and then sort of like to sort of, say something, right? And then I'm obviously the only person who got back to them.
Oh, truly.
So unfortunately, all there is in this supplement, as well as a little background, is like one sarcastic bit. Like, I thought it was going to be in the context of, like, lots of serious ones and stuff like that, and lots of touching ones and tearjerkers, and then my one little sarcastic one would just be a balance, but it seems to be I was the only one who got back to them.
Oh, that's sad. And how many of them were there? 50?
I don't know, Father Bob.
That's not a bad picture of you. That shows you as a very thoughtful person.
Matchmakers gather for conference. There was a matchmaker conference. Nearly 25 matchmakers gathered at the Hakoah Club in Sydney to discuss matters of Jewish dating.
What's that person called?
What are they called? A
shibboleth.
A shibboleth.
No, it's not at all. I thought you knew these things off the top of your head.
I didn't realise it was that organised a scene.
Yeah. They've
got this service there where you can ring up if you're
and give a detailed description of yourself.
J Junction, and they'll find you a Jewess.
Excellent idea.
Might be giving
Don't
J
take
Junction
anything for granted.
a date, a ring this week.
Excellent idea.
Organising.
Well, I can't read much from the Melbourne's Best Guide for Parents, can I? Anyway, you told me off last week for reading a paper while you were asking me a question, and that was picked up in the guest book too. So I'm not going to do that again.
Now, I noticed Kevin Rudd was trying to show off this week that he knew he's the opposition leader.
Yes, of course.
For all the podcasters who are not Australian.
Doesn't like swearing unionists.
He was talking about Salman Rushdie getting the knighthood, and he was trying to show off about how well he knew Salman Rushdie. And, when Salman came down and, who knows him well? Sort of. And this is from the horse's mouth, because I heard this. This isn't like 4 degrees of separation. Jason Donovan.
Truly?
Yes.
Jason Donovan, as you all know out there...
We don't have to explain who he is.
Oh. Well, you usually say this is old-fashioned and he's been dead for years and all the rest of it.
Maybe you're right.
No.
Maybe you're right.
It was a long time ago, Jason Donovan. You tell them who Jason Donovan is, if you can remember.
Star of Neighbours.
And Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. See, this is all old stuff, John. You told me this was all boring.
No, you're so right. It was
just
like
because I mentioned Walt Whitman.
It was like one time I was on Robbie Buck's Triple J show and I was talking about Run DMC, and then he kind of brought up that point off microphone also, like, hey, John,
dated you.
Do you want to talk about some more kind of, like, topical
exactly,
hip-hop
up to date.
Possies?
Yes, exactly. So I can't talk about Sinead O'Connor.
Anyway, Jason, can I tell him the Jason Donovan thing, right? So this is what he told me. Because I'd heard the rumour and then I rang him on the phone to do research. That when Salman Rushdie was in hiding, he happened to be renting out his property in Britain. And so, just incidentally, Salman Rushdie came for the for the property, and then either MI5 or MI6, I forget which is which. They came too just to check out and apparently it was the perfect property because it was in a cul-de-sac, which is a dead end, which meant it was easier for MI5 or MI6 or whatever the hell they're called to kind of monitor it. And so they took it up, and he moved into Jason Donovan's place.
Well, that's interesting because
and they bomb-proofed the door at considerable expense. And then, this is what Jason Donovan told me, he said his situation changed and he wanted to move back in after about a year. And then Salman Rushdie had failed to re-sign the lease form or something like that, like some little minor kind of technicality. So he booted Salman Rushdie out and moved back in. And MI5 were furious because they'd spent all the money bomb-proofing the door.
So Salman Rushdie, in fact, got more trouble from Jason Donovan than he did from the combined weight of the whole entire international global Islamic army.
Correct.
Don't believe it. Anyway, your friend, Christopher Hitchens, again, if I mention him, did in fact share accommodation with Salman Rushdie.
Now, you know, Jason Donovan once pitched an idea to me. Maybe I should have pitched it to Todd Cohen.
There you are. See what I mean? What a musical.
This is how I met Jason Donovan in the first place. Someone rang me up and said, Jason Donovan's got this movie idea and he needs someone to write it. So I had breakfast with him. And he...
wrote it on the napkin.
Yeah, he pitched this idea. I had to do that thing where I was, like, smiling the whole time. Like, that's a really good idea. When really in my head I was like,
Yuck.
My God.
Yes. But that'd be a good combo, John Safran and Jason Donovan.
Yes. I don't want to give away his idea because it's not very prudent. It's not, you know what I mean? He might still be pitching it around.
Well, it could be commercial sabotage.
It was James Bondi.
Don't say anything.
James Bondi, and it was some sort of, like, parody of James Bond.
See, now I'm an accessory.
With a surfy. If you want to write that up as a 90-page screenplay...
What is Jason Donovan doing these days? Do you know? Is he in Australia?
I'm not sure.
This is boring. You tell me that before. I'm telling you it's boring.
Apparently he's doing Celebrity Survivor in the UK as the producer screamed in my ear then. You know they can scream in our ears if they want.
No, because I've got nothing on my ears. You see what I mean? Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you for that, John.
Coming up next...
Julian Burnside, QC and President of Liberty Victoria.
This is Triple J. That was Father Bob. I'm John Safran. Joining us, free speech advocate, Julian Burnside, QC, President of Liberty Victoria. Hello. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Excellent. Are you still wearing those glasses that you're famous for wearing, the little, the round ones?
I'm still wearing glasses, yes.
And your wife wears a matching pair, doesn't she?
No, they're not matching at all. They're similar, but they're not matching. And
they're pretty close.
We chose them independently of each other. In fact, I got my first pair of glasses like that before I even met her.
Because when I saw you two together, I thought it was like, you know, when a couple and they go out jogging and they've got matching tracksuits.
Yes, I know what you mean. It's not quite like that.
Now, freedom of speech, such a thorny issue, isn't it? And I noticed something in the paper last week, which no one really kind of spun off and looked at the free speech implication of that. I thought it was a real kind of icky area, troubling, icky area that's hard to kind of say, well, what side will you go on? And it was about, I'll talk in broad terms, shouldn't I? Because you're a lawyer and stuff and you'll know that we can't talk about things or something like that. Anyway, basically there was this guy in jail and he was in there for murder. And then he was dragged before the courts for child porn offences. And then I was a bit confused. I was like, how can someone who's in jail be on child porn offences? Like, what happened? And then it was, like, even more confusing because he was charged with producing child porn. I'm thinking, what kind of lax prison system do we have when you can be a prisoner in, in a jail and you're setting up photo shoots with children and no one notices? But then it came to pass that his producing child porn offence, if he had done it, and I think he and his lawyer deny it, was just writing written word like child porn. So is that just free speech that we should allow?
Well, you see, I don't even regard that as a question of free speech, but rather as freedom of thought. Let's assume for the moment, because I only know as much about the case as you do, but let's suppose he wrote those stories himself.
Yes.
They were handwritten stories, and let's suppose that he produced them and didn't intend to show them to anyone else. He just gets his rocks off writing things for himself. I would say that he's not speaking to anyone. He's just recording his thoughts with no intention of communicating them to anyone else. Now, if you're not allowed to think things like that, then that seems to me to be an extreme misuse of the law.
And what happens if a person was to write child porn stories and then try to distribute them? Does that make it any different in your mind?
Well, let's assume they fall within that range of material that is prohibited as child pornography. Then I can understand why you need a law which says it's an offence to distribute material like that. But that, where you get into free speech issues, I mean, you need to deal with...
But isn't there a huge leap between taking photos of someone where there's an obvious victim and then just words on a page?
It depends on what vice the Parliament is aiming at. If they're trying to prevent people from getting salacious pleasure out of viewing child pornographic material, that's one thing. If they're trying to prevent children from being exploited for the purposes of producing child pornography, that's a separate thing. But we still recognise the existence of some victimless crimes, and I suppose producing salacious material without using children can properly be classified as criminal. I'm not saying that I agree with taking that position, but I can understand society taking a position like that, and I don't think there's anything terribly unusual about it. But can I step back to the broader question of the right of free speech, the right of free thought, any other right you want to identify? The starting principle is that no right is absolute. As one writer put it, your right to swing your fist stops just short of my nose, because swinging your fist interferes with my right to physical integrity. Likewise, your right to free speech may interfere with my right to privacy. And so where different competing rights intersect, you have to decide where the dividing line is to go. You can later saying, well, we don't want people running around sort of crazed with salacious ideas about child pornography, therefore we will make it an offence to distribute child pornography material. And there you have to adjust the balance between freedom of speech on the one hand and the general protection of society from unreasonably salacious material. Where you draw the line is the really contentious question. That's where minds can differ. But the principle, I think, is fairly easy to identify.
It messes with your head a bit, because I guess as soon as it's photography, then it's kind of a bit easier, isn't it? You just kind of go, well, it's not good to do that. But then as soon as it's just words on a page, it's like... It does get into very vague things, like you're talking about, like, just say you write this salacious story, but you don't happen to mention the age of the person, but it's implied, and you don't write the word 11 years old, but you kind of imply it by the description of the kid. Or it's like, how can you kind of legislate that sort of thing?
Well, that ultimately comes down to defining what constitutes pornography, and then identifying whether it's pornography relating to children. And don't forget, in the 1950s and 60s, I think through to the 70s in Australia, there were some photographs of adults that could not be sold, could not be possessed, even if the subject of the photograph was fully consenting. They were regarded as pornographic, and the position taken by the Parliament was that some pornographic material is too wicked to be seen except by, I suppose, bishops and censors.
Now, as someone interested in free speech, as you are, how has the whole internet revolution, how does that impact on things? Because I was thinking about how in the olden days, there used to be like, the issue was, hey, there's free speech in theory, anyone can, say what they want or whatever, in America, for example, but in practice, who could get on the television? In practice, who could make a $1 million film? In practice, this and that. And now there's been a bit of a kind of, I guess, a flip around in one regard, where in theory, there's restrictions of free speech, like, for example, talking about euthanasia in Australia, but in practice, people can go to their computer and spend 7 seconds and finding out all this stuff that's supposedly banned.
Well, what that does is it should at least affect the practical implementation of where you draw the line between competing principles. But can I say, I think, to answer your first question, I think the arrival of the internet has been terrific as far as free speech is concerned, because as Bertrand Russell pointed out in a speech in 1922 or 23, I think it was, free speech is meaningless unless you have the ability to be heard. There's no point being able to go out into the desert and shout all your ideas if no one can hear them. And that's leaving aside Bishop Berkeley's resolution of the problem. The point about the internet is that people can actually command a moderate audience, whereas before they could command no audience at all unless they stood on a soapbox at Hyde Park. And I think it is a healthy thing in society for people to be able to express their views, even if we think they're silly views or ridiculous or even, dare I say it, dangerous views.
So when it comes to like campaigning for Philip Nietzsche, the euthanasia doctor who gets his books often held up at customs and so forth, is there an aspect where people like you should be pragmatic and go, well, you know, we can make this big fuss about this, but when push comes to shove, we can just tell everyone to go to Google and absolutely everything that Ruddock and Howard is trying to ban, you can just get within 7 seconds for free.
Yes, well, that's in principle that might be true, although often the people who want to know how to die with dignity are people who are older and who may not have the technical knowledge to use the internet. They may be so disabled that they can't use it in a practical sense. I guess the position you take on that depends on your position about euthanasia. Now, I happen to think that euthanasia is a good idea. You know, if it's my life, well, then I can decide when it should come to an end. And if I'm making that decision, I'd like to make it as pleasant as possible. So I think it ought to be legal to give people information about how they can end their lives safely and painlessly. If you take an opposite view, well, then I can understand an anxiety to prevent people from finding it out through books. But once again, it's balancing the right of free speech on the one hand against other social principles or moral principles, namely whether or not you're entitled to kill yourself when you need to.
Do you think when the opinion makers in Australia, such as on either the left or on the right, or if they're mainstream or if they're kind of more alternative or whatever, just everyone, when they talk about free speech, it's rare that they're not coming from a cynical position. Like, it's rare that they don't have some agenda about the particular issues being talked about. And then, like, for example, David Marr might talk about free speech, but every last example he brings up is, you know, about this left-wing person not being able to say that and this left-wing person not being able to say that. And similarly, on the other side, some right-wing person will talk about free speech, but it'll be all about the things he's interested in. And there doesn't seem to be too many people who just talk about free speech as an objective third party.
Look, I understand your point, and I think you're probably right, but it's inevitable, isn't it?
I guess so, but like in America, you've got things like the American Civil Liberties Union or whatever, and you read up about them, and there's always these insane, really intellectually stimulating kind of contradictions, like, for example, them going into bat for Nike because an anti-globalisation protester once has taken Nike to court because they don't think they should be able to advertise their products because they're bad for the third world, and the American Civil Liberties Union goes, well, actually, no, Nike has a right for free speech, and they'll campaign for Nike. And you kind of go, that would be a fairly cold day in hell with pigs flying for that kind of thing to happen in Australia.
Yeah, I think there's one important qualification to all of that, and that is whether you acknowledge that companies have the rights which we regard as human rights. Now,
and that's
free speech is essentially a human right, and I would say that human rights should not be accorded to corporations because they're not humans.
And in practice, I think that the distinction you make there in American legislation is there too, where there's a difference for, in theory at least, companies are held to have more limited free speech than individuals in America. Yeah,
and I think that's a sensible way of dealing with it. But going to your question, I think everyone comes to issues of free speech with an agenda in one sense. If determining where the limits to free speech are to be drawn, you have to have a view about the other side of the ledger. You know, if you think that killing innocent people is okay, well then shouting fire in a crowded theatre, would be seen as a legitimate exercise of free speech. It's a ludicrous position to take, obviously, but you can see how a person who thought it was okay to kill innocent people would draw the line much differently than you or I would. So a person with, say, a left-wing position is likely to look at drawing the line in such a way as to enable left-wing ideas to get some prominence. I just don't think there's much of a way around it. The important thing is for everyone to recognise that it is a process of adjusting competing rights.
And what about things like libel? I've always been confused with...
Well, that's the right of free speech versus the right of privacy.
I guess so. And then when you look at things like, just say, Holocaust denial, where you say, well, if an individual lies about one person, like, and if just say a Holocaust denier was to single out one old Jew and say, you know, you're lying about this, you're lying about that, that would be a libelous situation, I guess, or it could be. Whilst, like, how many people have to be libelled against before it goes into another area where it's free speech?
Well, you see, I think with Holocaust deniers, the problem is not so much libel, although that may come into play. The problem is very often that it might be sensibly seen as inciting people to violence. Because there are some views that are so deeply offensive to individuals as to have the potential of provoking them to violence, and obviously avoiding unnecessary violence is a reasonable social objective, and so I can understand why there are hate speech restrictions, which are necessarily restrictions on freedom of speech, but which are designed to restrict free speech so as to avoid inciting violence. Once again, just how far do you, whereabouts do you adjust that balance? Very difficult to know, and I take a different view on this, for example, to Brian Walters, who's a close friend of mine and previous president of Liberty Victoria. We happen to disagree about how you adjust those conflicting social interests, but it just shows how difficult the area is.
Well, Bob?
No, I'm just listening because you're on top form. And
have you ever had your free speech infringed? And everything just gets so confusing with free speech and with hate speech, like where suddenly two Christian ministers are in trouble in Victoria for vilifying Muslims, but then you just go, wouldn't Father Bob every week, well, maybe not every week, but every couple of months when he's just reading out of the New Testament, wouldn't he occasionally be vilifying Jews and so forth?
That's, well, actually, I don't think that's right. I've read the transcript of the Catch the Fire case, and the things that were said, although they were ultimately vindicated in the Court of Appeal, but the things that they said were pretty likely to stir people up against Muslims much more than anything you'll find in the New Testament. But I think there's a very important point here, and it's quite an interesting one. If you have the dominant majority vilifying a minority like Muslims, who at the moment are the object, unfairly, I think, of suspicion and perhaps hostility, if you have the dominant majority vilifying them, that is likely to create real and immediate trouble. If you reverse the position and have Muslims vilifying Christians, an unpopular minority vilifying the complacent majority, you're much less likely to provoke violence. So you then get into the interesting area of asymmetrical limitations on free speech, which if you thought the first bit was hard, the second bit's really hard.
Well, thank you very much for
Julian.
filling us in and telling us what to think.
Can I just round off and say this?
Yes.
It's really important in adjusting free speech questions or any other human rights questions to be very clear about what are the elements that are at play. The interest in free speech is one thing, the interest in not provoking violence is another, the interest in people's right to privacy and personal integrity and reputation is another, and until you articulate the elements that are at play in the particular case, you may not adjust the balance very sensibly.
Thank you very much.
Good on you. Thanks a lot.
This is Triple J. I'm John Safran. That's Father Bob. Why, that baby brochure
Yeah,
you've
I've got a baby
there.
brochure here.
You don't have...
Well, I'm getting a bit clucky, I suppose, at 73 years of age, you know what I mean? I'd like to have a...
I wasn't too old for Jerry Lewis.
How old was he, 70 or something?
I don't know.
Yeah,
or
but I'm
even
just
Jerry
looking
Lee
at all
Lewis.
these-
Didn't he kind of go with
He's
the youngsters.
incredible. No wonder it's expensive, isn't it? Here's a pusher for $299.95. But look at these lovely toys, John. We could have these lovely toys. That'd brighten up my miserable celibate life, wouldn't it? If I had a room full of babies' toys,
So
then I'd run the risk of having a policeman come and knock on the door and say, if you've got baby toys, you probably have got a baby hidden in the wardrobe.
Do you have this existential anguish over the fact that your lineage will not be continuing?
No, I don't think so.
But don't you have like niece and brother?
I've got there's Maguires around.
Yeah, so that's okay.
Yeah, there's
then.
Maguires in Brisbane.
Yeah. No, you're right. No great loss.
My brother, who's older than me, but also Shane, who's the nephew, and his two boys.
Yes.
See? So that goes on, but so
Your
what?
brother, there's those unresolved issues, isn't there?
What? Nah, not at all. He's getting better the older he gets. He is. He's remembering things, you see, because I kept prodding him, and now he realises that there are lots of things that he didn't speak about for 60 years.
Oh, really? Like really?
That are now...
Like what? Like really...
Detailed
like
things.
about your drunk father?
Nah, drunken father, poor old Jim. I'm going to, vindicate poor old Jim before I'm dead. I'll have him reconstructed. All right?
In your head?
Yes. Probably even in reality if I can rewrite the history of the Royal Navy.
Is it...
I'll have him sunk in the North Sea by a torpedo from a German destroyer.
Is it true that a baby was left on your doorstep?
Yes, it was 20 years ago.
And you know that baby now?
No, I don't know the baby now because the baby was arrested.
What does that mean?
I took the baby into the house because it was making strange noises in a box on the.
And what church were you in at this stage?
This one here, darling.
South
Everything
Melbourne?
that's happened to me has happened to me at that church.
So you went out the front door?
I went out to go to the basketball stadium and said, I'm not going to go, I'm bored with basketball. I drove home, lo and behold, coming out of a box on the veranda. And I thought it was, you know what, Felix the cat. I went inside in case it was an explosive suicide bomber cat, right? And then I was brave and said, remember your father in the Royal Navy. I went out to the box. Opened the box, looks what's in the box. A baby that was no more than 2 hours old.
No way.
There's nobody in the house. It's Sunday night. There's nobody in the village. I take the baby into the dining room, the celibate priest's big table, put it on the table and think to myself what to do. I know what I'll do. I said I will call the Victoria Police. The baby will be arrested on the table. So they came and arrested the baby and took it away. I asked the next week, excuse me, that they said, mind your own business.
Really?
The baby is of no further interest to you.
Wow.
And they said, looking a little bit, wink, wink to each other, this probably is the priest's baby. And he's concocted the story. See what I mean? Now, what about Christopher Hitchens might be listening to all this, for God's sake, and it's already a chapter in his book.
Joining us on the line now, author Christopher Hitchens. How are you?
A bit early to say, not bad.
A fantastic book, God is Not Great. And then, just in case anyone missed the point, the subtitle is How Religion Poisons Everything. Now,
it does.
But aren't there, like, good things to religion? What about all the good people involved in religion, like Mother Teresa, for example?
Well, I wish she picked a real good person. I mean, there's a bad bit of good if ever I've come across one.
Why? What was wrong with Mother Teresa? She seemed so nice in all those, television documentaries.
I didn't think so. I went to Calcutta to check up on her just to see, and there you have a person who's a terrible preacher of fundamentalism, much more extreme than the rest of her church, a friend of poverty, not of the poor, and a fraud.
In what way was she a fraud?
A friend of the nastiest kind of the rich person as well.
In what way was she a fraud?
Well, all the money that she was sent, which people imagined was buying a bite to eat or a place to sleep for the wretched of the earth, was spent on building convents in her name to preach the most extreme form of Catholicism, which equated contraception with abortion and abortion with murder. She went to Haiti, where, as you probably remember, under the Duvalier family,
yes,
the poor of the
Papa Doc,
probably the most miserable people in the world, really the poorest of the poor, to borrow her phrase. She praised their dictatorship, which was endorsed by the Vatican as well, and took money from them to build more convents that they had stolen from the unluckiest people on earth.
Okay, well, maybe Mother Teresa wasn't that good.
That's just for an example. I mean, yes. She campaigned in Ireland to stop divorce from becoming legal. And in the same year, so that her maid, Princess Diana, was lucky to have got out of a marriage that was obviously unhappy. And she's always a friend to the rich and the already fortunate.
Okay, well, maybe Mother Teresa wasn't that good. But what about people like Gandhi? Like Gandhi, surely he was a hero to that, and he was religious.
No, I mean, it's partly because of Mr. Gandhi's religion that India and Pakistan are as messed up as they are, if you want my opinion.
But he was such a cute-looking guy, you know. And a nice little... And he spread the word of peace.
I don't think so. I think people should dress properly when they go.
Okay, so give us your dossier on Gandhi. What was wrong with him?
That he was a Hindu. He believed that the spinning wheel, which is still on the Indian flag, is where everyone should be sitting, behind the spinning wheel. Enough with all these cars and high-rise buildings and clinics and airplanes and all this modern nonsense. The job of an Indian is to get back to the village and start spinning his own cloth. That's what he wanted everyone to do. If Indians had followed his advice, most of them would by now be dead or never have been born. But that's bad enough, of course. A complete reactionary on the Khomeini scale, hated the modern world, hated technology, hated all knowledge, anything like that. But because he was a Hindu preacher, it made it impossible for there to be a compromise on the Indian independence. It meant that Muslim India thought, well, we're not going to be led to independence by someone who's a Hindu fanatic. We want our own state. And you see how beautifully it's worked out. Now you have India and Pakistan having fought 3 wars and one unending one in Kashmir, will one day, probably not very far distant, have a nuclear war. And all of that could have been avoided if India had had a secular party leading it to independence instead of a religious nutbag.
Okay, so...
Religion poisons everything. Everything.
Okay, you say that. Okay, I understand your arguments from Mother Teresa and Gandhi, but what about the Dalai Lama? Surely there's nothing wrong with him. He's so delightful. He's just been in Australia very recently.
If he could, for example, if he could stop giving people lectures on how to have sex, I would feel less alarmed. Because you know what? When grown-ups can't leave off the subject of telling other people how to make love, I find I get the creeps. And then I get the creeps all over again when someone says, excuse me, I know I'm very modest and very humble and everything. Don't mind me, it's just that I'm a hereditary god. And and another thing, I'm a hereditary king. I'm very unassuming and very modest, and I have a weak smile that bewitches everybody, but you'd better bear this in mind. I was born a god and a king too. Well, if you can bear that, you can bear pretty much anything, I think.
And doesn't he get into fights with other sects of Buddhism sometimes?
It's on the whole better. Bear in mind the beatific smile, the lovely looks and so on. It's on the whole better not to cross him. If you're another kind of Buddhist, you can apparently see a whole other kind of smile.
Oh, really?
And indeed, in his little exile palace and his little exile kingdom and so on, yeah, it's on the whole better not to ask for anyone to have a vote on that thing either, because the smile gets a bit chilly when you ask for that. Let's not rain on anyone's parade. I mean, leave people undisturbed in their illusions, huh?
I was going to say something, but Bob Maguire is the priest on the show.
He's your enemy, Christopher.
Not at all.
Because he's the worst type of religious type, because he's not like an overt fundamentalist. He's kind of like
the book.
Slayer.
I like the book. But I was going to say, one of the points you make, and you make well, is that, in fact, I could trot out an argument that says, well, whatever about the toxic qualities of religious doctrine, we do things better for the poor and the underprivileged, and then you, of course, grab that and throttle that too, which is, I think, a fair. I can't.
That's the most horrible thing. I mean,
yes, you take that. That's offensive to you.
I hate that stuff. Well, we're so good to the poor and defenseless. I mean, apart from the fact I think it's sickly to go on about charity and weakness and so forth.
Yes, yes.
I could introduce you to tons of communists who've done unbelievably strong work for the poor, but you wouldn't think that said anything about their doctors, and neither would I.
Yes. What am I going to say to my colleagues, Christopher, when I say that, in fact, I enjoyed the whole book and agree with most of it?
Well, if you don't mind, I'll tell my publisher you said so.
Now, I notice you have it's one of the first books I've seen, which I really enjoyed, that had a go at Hanukkah, which I thought was an innocent Jewish festival that I was partaking in every year, spinning a nice little dreidel and lighting the menorah and having Hanukkah gelt.
Horror show. It's a horror show.
What's wrong with Hanukkah?
Well, most Jews have completely ignored it because, well, they didn't know particularly what it commemorated. There are so many Jewish holidays you're supposed to observe. This one was revived because it happens to be in the calendar quite near Christmas, and everyone thought, well, no, we don't want our kids left out while the Christians celebrate the winter solstice, which is what they are in fact celebrating. But leaving that to one side, what it commemorates is the victory of Jewish fundamentalism, of the deepest dye, the people who like the animal sacrifices and the circumcisions and the grim old Mosaic rituals, over the Hellenized and enlightened Greeks who were threatening, Hellenized and Greek as a tautology, Hellenized and enlightened Jews who were trying to move on a bit from the smoking altars and the circumcisions. So on the day when the Maccabean Orthodox and the fundamentalists won and defeated the Jews who were interested in Athens and in philosophy and in a bit more broad-mindedness, all our troubles really began. If that hadn't happened, there would be no father. I'm sorry I didn't get your name.
Maguire, Bob Maguire. That would be the original.
There would never have been any Christianity because Christianity is nothing but a Jewish heresy. And there would be no Islam either, because Islam is just a rip-off and a plagiarism of Judaism and Christianity. And we might have skipped the whole frigging thing.
Yes.
Now, is North Korea, you talk about North Korea, a lot of people think, oh, that's an example of secularism gone mad, and so, but you're saying it's a religious state?
You certainly can't say it's secularism gone mad. You could say it was Stalinism taken to its absolute ultimate.
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry.
Of making a god out of a human being.
Yes.
But it's certainly it's much more a perversion of a religious view of the world than of a secular one. I mean, it's only one short of a trinity that you have to worship a father and a son who's his reincarnation, which is actually what they say. It's also Confucianism gone mad to some extent. I used to wonder when I was a kid, listening to descriptions of heaven, which consist of, as you know, the opportunity to praise God evermore, everlastingly praising him and thanking him. I just think, sounds like hell to me. But I also can't imagine what it would really feel like to be praising someone and groveling and sprawling and thanking him.
And sitting on those clouds,
What would that feel like? Well, go to North Korea and you'll find out. That's what it would be like.
I love the fact, though, John, that he mentions a friend of mine and speaks very kindly about her, and that's Karen Armstrong, who wrote the book on the Great Transformation, she calls it, in the first millennium BC, when she maintains that something spiritually sensational, in fact, changed all of those regions of the world that produced what we call the original monotheisms.
Isn't it wonderful that heaven, having left us alone for what humanity's been on the planet, we now think for
6 million or
not 100.
No, 12 billion, isn't it?
No.
6 million.
That's the age of the Earth.
Yeah, the age of the Earth.
The age of the human species. That we took it in the teeth of a lot of religious opposition. We have finally found out a bit more about where we come from and what's going on. But human species probably not much older than 150,000 years old.
Now, what about people who...
For the first tens and tens of thousands of years, heaven is indifferent, apparently. It just watches this go on. People born, die, struggle, probably life expectancy of about 20, killing each other, dying of diseases they don't know there are germs even. And then in the last 6,000 at the most, last 2,000 according to some, finally decides to intervene in this, having watched it indifferently millions of people born and died. Who cares? So, okay, we better intervene. 2,000, 6,000 years ago.
Now,
only in remote parts of the Middle East where no one has the remotest idea what's going on and no one can read.
Now, Christopher, what do you
you can believe absolutely anything.
Now, what do you say about people who say your friend George W. Bush, he's a Christian fundamentalist, and the war that you support is actually a Christian war?
Well, that would be in the camp of people who are willing to believe anything. First, he's not my friend. Second, I don't support the war. I support our side in it against Al-Qaeda in Mesopotamia and the other parties of God who are trying to reduce Iraq to the level of Somalia or Afghanistan, which is what happened to the last two countries where the parties of God had things all their own way.
Well, summary. It was. That's a good summary.
So
there's no Christian side. There's no Christian side in that war. There, of course.
There's no Christian.
All the Christians in Iraq are being threatened with death as well, as are all the infidels and secularists.
But what about the Christian lobby groups in the United States saying no, we have to go fight in the Middle East to help out with the Armageddon and all that kind of stuff?
Ooh, the Armageddon.
Well, they say that no matter what you do. I mean, the evil thing about all religion is that it yearns for the end of days. That it openly says, "This is just a stupid interval we're going through now. The real fun will only begin when human life comes to an end." And they want it to happen, and where they can, they try and bring it on. Who said the following? A nuclear holocaust would have no effect except to hurry millions of people into a better life that is coming to them anyway. Who said that?
George Bush Sr.
Jesus Christ.
No.
Buddha.
No, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, God, he hasn't.
He's the worst.
The last chapter, John.
I should say, not the present one. It's a couple of archbishops ago. But most people would think Mr. Rafsanjani on a bad day in Iran,
yes,
or Osama bin Laden. No, it was the sheep-faced head of one of the mildest churches, people think, in the world. But he had no choice, really, but to say that, because that's what the preachments are. This is just a veil of tears through which we've got to trudge. Why we bother with the poor on the way through, I have no idea, unless it's to try and win converts, incidentally. Why the church does bother is beyond me, because it's just a prelude. And we yearn for it all to end and for us to see our mythical prophets come back for a second chance.
God is not great.
Who can possibly morally believe this?
I believe in the relational matrix. That's the one I'm going for.
Was that Father Maguire talking there?
Yes, it was. Because I don't want to get into trouble with you. We're talking about God, so I thought the relational matrix seems to be cosmic enough and eternal enough to fit everything in, including your new enlightenment, which is the last chapter of your book.
Well, if it'll cover everything, I'm suspicious of it.
Oh, sorry, I'm done.
If things that explain everything,
I think it will.
Nothing.
I think it'll be beautiful.
God is not great. How religion poisons everything. Out now, Christopher Hitchens. Thank you very much for joining us.
It was sweet of you to ask.
Religious Song of the Week.
There you are. That was the big one.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to cut Christopher Hitchens, one of the world's greatest intellectuals, short. But, of course, we dragged on for about 25 minutes. In the middle, going over in very slow pace this week's Australian Jewish. Yeah. We always get it a bit wrong, don't we? Religious Song of the Week. Oh, first of all, goodbye and thank you to all our guests.
Yep.
Thank you, Christopher Hitchens. Thank you, Chris Dunkley from the Cornish Association.
Julian Burnside.
Thank you, Todd Cohen from Reveille. Religious Song of the Week, Yasmin Levy. It's a new record, but it's an ancient tongue, Ladino. Are you familiar with Ladino?
Middle Europe.
It's a combination of Hebrew and Spanish.
Oh, sorry.
That the Sephardi Jews used to speak. Dying language, dying even more than Yiddish. Anyway, but she's put out a record, and this is a song called La Sirena, which all the Ladino listeners will know means the mermaid. Goodbye, listeners.
Triple J.